is Felicia Shi, and this is my oratory speech on multi-party systems. For most of my life, I've heard about the two major political parties, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. They always argue with each other and end up on the news one way or another. But I have recently wondered, what about the other parties? Why are only two parties mentioned in the United States? Well, the answer to this is that the US is dominated by a two-party system. However, there are other parts of the world who have a multi-party system, which is a system made up of 3 or more political parties. Some say that the multi-party system is superior to the others. However, this isn't necessarily true, as the system does have some flaws and it isn't the best system to use in politics. According to Anastasia Melachova, a student at Lancaster University, accountability is an important component of democracy, which implies that in a democracy, citizens must have ability to reward and punish office holders for good and bad conduct and successful or unsuccessful policies. Multipartyism may lead to a decrease in accountability. A multi-party system will not benefit our democracy for this reason of accountability and many other reasons. So, let's discuss how a multi-party system isn't as effective as a two-party system. First, we'll look at Europe's history with multi-party systems. Second, we'll look at how multi-party systems have achieved little success in Europe. And finally, we'll look at the effective solution. Political parties in Europe can be grouped into conservatives, liberals, and social democrats. Christian democratic parties, DC, emerged at the end of the 19th century, and while some of these parties took on a pro-business orientation, conservative and liberal parties often joined together. In the 1920s, fascist movements had adopted a form of extreme militaristic nationalism and gained power in Italy, Japan, and Germany. However, they were outlawed after these countries were defeated in World War II by the US and their allies. By 1945, fascism had largely lost interest in many countries. In the 1980s and 1990s, new chauvinist and nationalist parties arose in Europe, arguing for restrictions on immigration and curtailment of rights. Since then, they have had some success. For example, Jean-Marie Le Pen, France's National Front Party leader, reached the runoff of the 2002 presidential election, and today the party led by Le Pen's daughter now polls higher than the two major political parties in France. Overall, Europe's political system has been constantly changing, which is one of the reasons why the multi-party system hasn't exactly worked for them. One country in Europe in which the multi-party system especially hasn't worked is in Italy. From the end of World War II until the mid-1990s, Italian politics was dominated by two major political parties: the Christian Democratic Party, DC, and the Italian Communist Party, PSI. In the 1980s, the society was undergoing swift and extreme change, but the ruling class was older and unable to understand its wants and needs. Thus, this last attempt to defend this class was the five-party coalition formula, which lasted until 1992. This coalition not only had failed, but its members were also swept away in the deluge. As a result, the crisis of this coalition formula turned out to be a systemic crisis, or the crisis of a system unable to change its cabinets or players without also changing the rules of the game. The first-party system had reached the end in 1993. According to SSOER, the number of relevant parties in Italy has constantly been higher than 5. This is a clear indicator that the system was severely fragmented. The system has seen an increasing trend of automation and fragmentation since 1994. More parties, usually minor and short-lived organizations. Even after the Cold War, the ideological distance between the parties has constantly remained high. SSOER also says that the temporary reduction in polarization registered in 1994 lasted no more than a few years, and since 2001, the ideological distance has reached levels similar to those of the previous highly ideological phase. Today, the current problems in Italy are a result of a weak economy and failure to form a workable coalition. Based on this, I think it's safe to say that a multi-party system doesn't end up working at all. This brings us to the solution to using a different system than a multi-party system. Instead, countries could use big tent parties, or parties that represent a huge base of the electorate or society. These big tent parties are also made up of smaller and more diverse parties, meaning that instead of one main opinion, they are made up or have different opinions. The website Tutor to You says that big tent parties typically do well in elections, capitalizing on the diverse nature of their base to secure big poll numbers. An example of this is the 2002 presidential election. How did Joe Biden win the Democratic primary and end up getting elected president? Well, Biden won the Democratic primary by making peace with both sides of the Democratic Party. He tried to appeal to the progressives with an ambitious policy platform, and at the same time, he opposed structural changes to the political process, which is what the moderates wanted. With a huge electorate base, he was able to defeat his Republican candidate, who was focusing on a smaller fundamentalist base. Overall, big tent parties are better than multi-party systems, as they accept people who disagree instead of rejecting them and lowering the chances that the party will win an election. After looking at Europe's history with multi-party systems, I now know more about why multi-party systems are never mentioned on the news. The US made a good choice to stick to a two-party system. Look at Italy. Have you seen how many times they have changed their political system? It's almost like you changing your clothes every day. Not only this, but Italy's ineffective governing has led to economic instability and slow growth. At least the US can stick to one system. Compared to Italy, the US has created a relatively stable economic environment and has stuck to a two-party system in recent years. It has created It has also created a big-time party, and the US has experienced some of the best economic times since the end of World War II. But who knows? Italy might experience as much success as the US has had in terms of politics and economics. They may even have to deal with the constant Democrat-Republican arguments in the future. Only time will tell. Thank you.